Good afternoon. My name is Julia Hier. I'm both the Senior Policy Advisor and the Rules Coordinator here at the Building Codes Division. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us today to discuss rulemaking relating to Senate Bill 866 and updates to OAR 918020 and OAR 918098. This meeting is being recorded to maintain a record of the advice that is provided today. There is an agenda for the meeting that was provided in advance. If you do not have access to the agenda today, I'm going to be providing the background in advance of the discussion on each issue. In addition, the agenda is available online on the division's website if you have access to the internet. I'll ask Laura or Melissa to now post a link to that agenda in the chat as well, so you can just click on that if you are able. I know some of you are used to our board meetings that are more formal and require motions. This is a less formal process and does not require any motions. We do encourage participants to have an open discussion and to provide feedback, information, and ideas. Since we are in a virtual format with a fair number of participants, I'm going to ask folks that are using the computer to use the raise hand function during the meeting if they are able. I will attempt to call on people in the order that I see hands raised. That said, I do understand some folks may be on the phone or some people may have difficulty using that feature. So if necessary, you can feel free to speak up and jump into the conversation where you see fit. As we go along, if you have any advice about fiscal impacts, we rely on that when we go and file our rules with the Secretary of State. So please keep in mind any fiscal impacts that you may be aware of or that you may think may be present as we discuss various options. We want to know if there's costs or if there's savings to you, the people you represent, or others. Since this is a virtual meeting, please keep in mind that your microphone does pick up background noises and conversations. With that, I'd ask that you use mute to prevent background noises when you're not wanting to speak at the meeting. If you are on the phone, please don't place us on hold since we'll pick up background music and cannot turn that off. If you need to disconnect for any reason, or if you get disconnected for any reason, feel free to hop back in at any time and rejoin the meeting. To start off, I would like to know who is present. I've introduced myself, Julia Hier. The Building Codes Division's Administrator, Alana Cox, is also with us today. Alana, if you want to say hi, we'll test out your mic here.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks everybody for joining.
There may be some other BCD staff, like Laura and Melissa, are helping with running the meeting. Some people may be present to observe. If anybody's part of BCD staff and not participating in the meeting, I think for interest of time, we can skip over them. But if there's any desire to participate, if you could go ahead and introduce yourself. I know Steve Sims is here with us as well. And Steve, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Stephen Sims, Training and Outreach Manager for BCD, and I'm going to go out real quickly and try to get in for a different browser because my camera's not working.
Very good, thank you. So I have an RSVP list. As people were logging in, I was trying to jot down the names that I could identify, but I know some people are on the phone and some people that jumped in towards the start of 1 o'clock. I may have missed you. So I'm going to go ahead and run through the list of names that I have been able to confirm the people I think are here, and then we'll go through anybody that I may have missed. And I'll ask that you confirm that you're present, and we'll just also give an opportunity to make sure your mic is working and make sure you don't keep yourself on mute like I did at the start of the meeting. There's mute on the phone if you're on your phone, and then also an unmute button on the Zoom meeting as well. So Jack Applegate, are you present?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. David Flemings?
Present. Nope.
Hey, David.
Hi.
Gregory Hinkleman?
I am here. Just go by Greg. And
hi, Greg.
Not always present, but that's, being a city manager does that.
Very good. Thank you and welcome. Brian Krieg?
Yes, I'm present and listening in. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Erin Reynolds?
Hello. Yes, I am here. Thank you for having us.
Excellent. Thank you. And I think I also saw Wendy Fairley Campbell from City of Florence.
Hi, good afternoon. Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Matt Roselle.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Thorrington, City of Portland.
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert Westerman.
I'm here. Thank you.
Ted Zook.
I'm here. Thank you. Working on video.
Great. And there's a phone number ending in 3606.
Hi, Julia. I'm not sure if that's me. This is Megan Sackett, and I'm with the Enforcement Division. I'm a contested case representative there.
Great. Thank you, Megan.
Hi, Julia. That's Lauren Bowling. Sorry, I was on mute.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. And welcome. Is there anybody that I may have missed? I just heard a ding, so I'll just double check. Anybody else that plans to participate that has not had a chance to introduce themselves? Okay, thank you. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and open, I'm going to start with issue 1 that is on that issues document that I mentioned earlier. I'm going to pull that up in front of me. So the first issue that we are looking at, so what we went ahead and did was looked at Senate Bill 866 and went through Division 20 and Division 98 rules and took a look at what issues seem to be right for rulemaking as it relates to that bill and issues that are needing to get resolved now that Senate Bill 866 has passed. So the first issue relates to training for qualified employees. This would be a new rule, and the Senate bill in Section 2, subsection 1, gives a definition of a qualified employee. It describes it as an individual that a municipality employs and has designated to ratify or disapprove a contract building official's discretionary decisions, and who, before exercising oversight over a contract building official, completed with any applicable certification or other evidence of completion, basic training that the director determines is necessary, and within 180 days after a municipality's designation of the individual as a qualified employee, completed with any applicable certification or other evidence of completion, any advanced training that the director determines is necessary. So the division's anticipating a basic 2-hour online training with individualized division follow-up on that training. The division also anticipates an advanced training to take place by way of a 2-day class with focus on oversight of a building department. And we're seeking feedback on the scope of that basic and advanced training and the rulemaking that goes along with that. So the two options that we've identified here is to proceed with a division-provided 2-hour online basic training and a division-provided 2-day class for the advanced training. Another option provides different recommendations relating to the scope of the basic training and advanced training for qualified employees if different recommendations are provided. So with that, I want to open it up for discussion. I see Greg's hand is raised here, so I'm going to start off with Greg.
Thank you. Couple of things on this. The basic training, if you will, good idea. I think that'll be very helpful to those of us who use these services. I certainly do here in the city of Clatskanie. I'm concerned about the advanced training and how detailed and how cumbersome that's going to be. I mean, one of the reasons why I use a third-party vendor is so there's certain aspects that I don't have to worry about. And I leave that to my contractor, my contracted building official. So I would want to drill into and see what the so-called advanced training is. You ran through some definitions of the qualified employee. I want to see what that's all about, whether that I can delegate that to somebody a lower level than myself. And especially with the office staff who handle the permits and what have you, can I have them take this training instead of myself? So that's my only red flag at this point is what does that so-called advanced training entail, and do we even need to have it? We'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Does anyone else wish to raise their hand, provide feedback on or thoughts on the advanced training or the basic training? David?
Yeah, just a quick thought. I know BCD's been providing some kind of training classes where it's self-certification, more of a pre-recorded type thing. Is that what we're thinking about for the basic training, to where it would be something that's readily available? Should somebody need it, they could get online and take it, say in an afternoon type thing?
Yes, so for the basic training, what's being looked at is a 2-hour online course. The advanced training is looking at a 2-day class. And I don't know that we've identified any, just to get to Greg's question, as far as who can do that class. The definition of qualified employee that I went through it provides some barrier or some limitations as to who that person is. They have to be employed by the municipality. They have to be designated for the ratification or disapproval of the building official's discretionary decisions. And then if they are that qualified employee, they would have to do that basic training and that advanced training.
Yeah, Julia, if I can hop in and maybe provide a little more detail on just kind of how we're thinking about it. To Greg's point, I think there's no limitation on how many people you can send through the courses. So it would probably be a good idea for these cities to consider sending a couple of folks so that you're able to back up, should someone go on vacation or whatever, keep things moving, and we wouldn't stop you from that. And to Dave's question, I think we had been thinking about exactly what you're talking about, some pre-recorded training for the basic training so that it can stand up really quickly. Because I think one of the purposes of that shorter course is also to be able to cover an unexpected vacancy, that kind of thing while you recruit. So we recognize you're not going to want to be sitting around waiting for a class to be able to start moving forward under the provisions of the bill. But the pre-recorded, we were hoping to balance out the lack of interactiveness of that by doing that individualized follow-up, so we can at least make sure people's questions get answered, that kind of thing. And to Greg's point about do we have to do it, the bill specifically references kind of 2 levels of training, a basic and an advanced. And so it's just kind of a matter of what's appropriate for basic and what's appropriate for advanced. So we were thinking with basic, we stand it up really quickly. It's available to get going, as soon as somebody needs it. And advanced, we wanted to make it a more robust class where we really can dig in and talk through how to oversee a building department and use some of the materials we use for our building official certification courses for that class. So just a little more context on how we're thinking about things.
Thank you, Alana. And Wendy, I see your hand up.
Yes, I just wondered if there was a cost associated with these trainings.
Yeah, and Alana's shaking her head down.
I think I see Jack's hand as well, Julia.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, you're in my corner. It's blending with your background. Sorry, Jack. Go ahead.
It's okay. I think I raised my regular hand a few times trying to find my button. I forgot. It's been a week since I was online. I just want to say that I'm strongly in favor of this multi-level training session. We obviously have a very limited timeline for city staffs and all the jurisdictions that we work with to get the original training to meet the deadline. So it was really important that it's done that way, and I appreciate that. And also, you know, for Greg and others, the longer training, the 2-day one, it's really important because there's a lot of new things that need to be set up and things that need to be revised, operating plans, setting up your appeals committee locally or working that out with the county. And so I do envision and hope it is a lot like the building official course with the administrative rules and provisions and then scope limited and oversight to specifically what the bill says. So I'm really in favor of the way it's laid out. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Any other thoughts or comments as it relates to this training? The rules or the fiscal impact? Erin, yes.
Hi, thank you. I'll second what Jack just said. And then as a city manager, knowing that myself and a department director will likely be covering and being this qualified employee, I hope that the 2-day training would be really practical and help us understand how to make sure we're getting to the spirit of the rules and what we need to be implementing so that we can, you know, be in compliance and doing our best job to keep our communities safe and healthy. So I actually look forward to it. I kind of like training, and always virtual options are great for those of us that are a couple 100 miles away. That's always much appreciated as well. So if that could be considered as an opportunity, that would be also greatly appreciated.
Great, thank you, Erin. David? David, do I see your hand up, Fleming? No? Okay.
Nope.
Any other comments on this one? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and move over to issue 2, which relates to discretionary decisions. This is also going to be a new rule. Under the bill, contract building officials may make discretionary decisions, but they must notify a qualified employee in writing of each of these decisions, and they must notify a permit applicant of each discretionary decision that relates to the permit application. The notice must list and describe available opportunities for a hearing and appeal of the decision. Once a qualified employee receives notice of a decision, that employee has 30 days to review and ratify or disapprove the decision. In addition, once the permit applicant receives notice of the discretionary decision, they have 30 days to appeal to the local board, and the local board has 30 days after receiving notice of the appeal to review and issue a determination. The division seeks feedback on the timeline for the building official to provide notice of their discretionary decision to the qualified employee and a permit applicant. One option is to require the building official to provide notice in writing of a discretionary decision to a qualified employee and permit applicant within 5 business days of making that decision, or to identify another timeline or standards that should be applied here. So I'll go ahead and open it up for discussion on issue 2. Brian.
Yes, I have a question a little bit as to what the notification to the permit applicant would be. Is it just that you've been denied your permit, or is it, and as I was thinking as we were putting this together, it would be the rationale why the decision was made, especially if it's in the negative. On that would be the main part of that. And so that's a little unclear here at the moment what the notice might we would be requiring it to include.
Very good. So I think the bill will addresses the notice, not to that level of detail. So notice of the discretionary decision. As far as what additional information might be provided in there, it does not indicate that. And I'd be interested if people have opinions one way or the other as to on that issue, what should be included.
Julia, if it's okay.
Yep, Jack, go ahead.
You know, as far as notification goes of any decision we're making as a building official or a plans examiner, those things are all in writing. We already have to cite the code and the reasoning when we're citing in a letter on a plan review or any decision that we make. So I think keeping the language very simple and consistent with the existing rules for citing the section or administrative rule or the reason for a denial of one of these items requiring discretionary decision, I think is the way to go. So we don't reinvent the wheel and we stay consistent with the existing rules. I think 5 business days is very reasonable, easy to accommodate. If you're typically reviewing a permit set for any reason and you've turned it down, you're usually going to issue that in writing the same day or the next business day. So I think it'll work as an option intended. I think the first option is reasonable.
Thank you. Ted. Ted, did you have your hand raised?
They may not know. They may lower it.
Okay. I was fumbling with my buttons there and trying to do 2 things at once, and I am horrible at doing 2 things at once. So sorry about that. And I missed some of what Jack was saying as I had a squirrel came in my office while Jack was talking. But I guess I'm a little stuck. Do we have a definition of what a discretionary decision is? Because that could pretty much be anything. It doesn't have to be negative. It could be something positive even. And it just seems overly broad to me that, contract building official would have to, basically end up being on a daily basis saying, well, I made these decisions. That's what they do. They make decisions during the day. So I guess that's where I'm at. Yeah. Do we have that nailed down on what that actually is?
Thank you. Yes. So the bill, Senate Bill 866, does define discretionary decision to mean waiving a plan review, an inspection, or a provision of the state building code, or allowing an alternative material, design, or method of construction.
Okay. And see, in my mind, those are all positive things. It's not necessarily that. I guess I kind of agree with the way the bill is written. I guess I should have read it a little closer, but it seems to me that it's backwards there. If somebody's being denied, that seems more of something that's reportable versus allowing something to move forward. But
I interpret it, Ted, to include the inverse. So it's allowing or disallowing an alternate method. It's waiving or refusing to waive plan review, that kind of thing. So it would be both sides of the coin.
Okay.
It's actually a fairly small list of things, fortunately. So, but I agree, Ted. It's been a few years trying to say there's really not that many items this is going to apply to. So.
David, I see you have your hand raised.
I do. While I'm much like Ted, I see these as a lot of positive things. Couple of things that Alana just said kind of raised the hair on the back of my neck. Certainly, there's going to be a couple of occasions that if someone walks in and we tell them that they don't need a permit for some minor amount of work, whatever that is, we don't even have a permit applicant to necessarily notify, but yet that discretionary decision that's minor enough that it doesn't, the code wouldn't apply to it or you wouldn't need a permit would require notification under this thing. The other one that Alana.
David, you're cutting out there a little bit. Would you mind just repeating that? I heard that if a permit applicant or if somebody walks in, and I think there was some more.
Hopefully that's a little better. If a permit applicant walked in and they didn't need a permit, you determined that it was minor enough work that it didn't require a permit, you're required under this to notify them. You don't even have an applicant to notify at that point. The second one would be that if you're saying that we need to notify them that we've determined a permit is required, that's a much bigger list. We get that question a lot of, do I need a permit for this? By code, you do. If that's a determination that needs to be notified, that's all of a sudden a big issue where these other discretionary decisions were very small.
Yeah, Dave, if I could maybe help clarify a little bit, I think the idea is not where you have a cite it, write it path, right? Where something is exempt from permit and you're just telling a customer, yes, that shed in your backyard is exempt from permit. That's not a discretionary decision, right? It would be something that otherwise requires a permit where you're saying we don't need to do plan review or inspection on this, even though there is a cite it, write it path to say we could, we're choosing not to. So I think that's what it's trying to capture.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And I think this whole thing, I think, is going to need to be very clear for all of our trainings and everything else to know that that is the scope that we're talking about, because that keeps it in check and it makes it very doable.
Thank you. Jack, I see your hand.
I will be brief on this one. I just going to say, me too, what Alana said. But also with that, I think in some of the clarity, they may say, hey, I don't want to provide a site plan. And that is one of the items. And sometimes we have to say, we're sorry, but public works, engineering, parks, they all require a site plan. And so we're not requiring an additional site plan, just the one that you've provided as one of those weird examples that might come up.
Any other comments as it relates to these discretionary decisions issue or the fiscal impact of this? I don't see any. Oh, yes, Jack.
There was one more thought that I had. Oh man, I hope I didn't just lose it again with all my button clicking. I'll have to come back to it. I drew a blank. I'm sorry.
That's okay. If it comes to you, just feel free to let us know and we'll add it to it. Matt, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in as well that these are everything outside the normal code path that we can't cite and write. Those are those discretionary pieces. And then also when we're making, or when they're making that notice to the qualified individual, is that just an email or is there a formal process that they have to follow? Is there anything, established at this point for that?
The city, I think, is going to have some choices on how they set it up. So I think it was purposefully silent that if they want to do, a spreadsheet for the week versus an email for everyone or some other process, that there's flexibility. I think later in our issues document, there's a question of what should be included in the operating plan. And one of the kind of things on the table is, do we want cities to be laying out what their plan is for those notifications so that we can, see that?
And one other question on top of that, do those need to be cataloged in order to go back and look at those, or are they just, once they're approved, they move through?
I think it would just be normal, kind of whatever your retention schedule is. Is that what you mean? Like, whatever, if it's I don't know what it would be for these. I have to find whatever records category it would fall into, but I think it would just be your normal records retention. Sure. And yeah, there's no obligation that you go put them in a separate spreadsheet or, database or something where you can track them long term.
Okay, great.
Julia, I remembered. Alona kind of reminded me when we started talking. Also, I envision, and that was the intent of the bill, that there might be some standing discretionary decisions that have been approved by the person from the jurisdiction having oversight. In other words, if we don't require a site plan for decks of a certain size, or if there's a waiver of a site plan for re-roofing permits and for items where we really don't need a site plan, and we've decided that that's the policy for everybody, and we put that within, not in our operating plan, but our policies and procedures plan, and signed off. And so I just wanted to make sure that that was going to be included in the stop process.
It's a good flag, Jack. We'll have to think it through in terms of whether it's kind of to the benefit of the customer or not. It sounds like those examples are, so I don't really see a risk with doing that if everybody's on the same page. But I guess it might be different if they're not, you know. But good to get that on the radar to think through.
Matt, I see your hand.
Sorry, that was up from last time.
Okay, no problem. Excellent. Any other comments on this issue before we move on? All right, seeing none, I'm going to get back to my issues document here. We are on issue 3, which is renewals and updated operating plans. So generally renewals, and this relates to 2 rules in Division 20, Rule 105 and 180. So generally renewals and updated operating plans occur on a 4-year cycle, with jurisdictions being on one of 4 cycle categories referred to as Group 1, 2, 3, and 4. In addition, when changes occur to an operating plan, municipalities must update their plan within 30 days from when the change occurs and submit a copy of the amended operating plan to the division. This results in the division receiving renewals and operating plans yearly and allows the division to react to any concerns raised by its stakeholders and to maintain a fluid process for review. Given the findings in the Department of Justice opinion, renewals have been on hold. Now that the issue is resolved, a program delegation has been resolved and addressed by the legislature by way of Senate Bill 866. All jurisdictions will need to begin renewing their programs and submitting updated operating plans. In addition, starting on January 1, certain cities and counties may use a contracted building official, and when that contracted building official makes a discretionary decision, notices must be provided with a qualified employee reviewing the decision and an ability to appeal to a local appeals board. The qualified employee and local appeals board have 30 days to issue a decision. That's by way of Senate Bill 866. Currently, under 918-020-105, it provides that upon notification, municipalities are required to submit the renewal by January 1. Section 5 of the bill further confirms that if a city intends to continue to procure their services from a contract building official, that city shall, on or after January 1 of 2022, submit an updated operating plan to the director that outlines the city's plan for compliance with Section 2 of the Act. So we're seeking input from our stakeholders on a couple related issues. I'm going to start with 3A, which is when to submit the next renewal and the updated operating plans. And just a sneak peek, 3B will be the cycle for the subsequent renewals and updated operating plans. I'll go through the options on both, and we can either talk about them together or separately, whatever works out best. So issue 3A, when to submit the next renewals and updated operating plans. First option would be have all jurisdictions submit a renewal and updated operating plan by January 1 of 2022. Second option, have all jurisdictions submit a renewal and updated operating plan by January 31, 2022, with all jurisdictions who procure services from a contract building official advising the division of their intent to use a contract building official by January 1, with the submission of their renewal between January 1 and January 31. Or there could be other options as well that we could discuss. The second part of this is that cycle for subsequent renewals and updated operating plans. That's whether to have each jurisdiction maintain their assigned groups, that group 1, 2, 3, or 4, and then have those groups submit their next renewal and updated operating plan in 1, 2, or 3 or 4 years, all depending on which group they're in, with subsequent renewals happening every 4 years. So basically, renewals would occur every 4 years, but through that first, everybody would renew in January, and then depending on your group, you'd fall into whether you're on year 1, 2, 3, or 4 for your next renewal, and then it's always 4 years after that. Or there's other options as well. So I will go ahead and open up the discussion for those issues. Yes, Nancy.
Thanks. So, you know, I would opt for the end of January or a little later, just to give us some time to put those together.
Very good, thank you.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you, Jack.
Just while we have this group, if I could flag a couple things on this issue. This is one of the items on the list that really applies to every building department, right? And we recognize we're looking at right after the holidays, and that's not ideal for a deadline. So I do want to reassure you, you know, in previous years, we've asked for a data submittal form with renewals. We're not going to do that this year. So we're really just talking about dusting off, updating, making sure your operating plan is good to go. So I just wanted to flag that for everyone. I think we'll look at getting back to data reporting a little later, and we want to have some conversations as part of the e-permitting bill that also passed the legislature about data. But this should be a lighter lift for all the jurisdictions. And I guess I would just plead with you all. I'm worried we've been out of renewal cycles for so long that people are going to miss the memo on this. So if you could help us get the word out, our local government partners on here in particular, that we're talking about everybody, whatever we land on, if it's January 31 or 1 or whatever the issue is, we need to let people know, because I'm not sure that it's on everybody's radar. So thanks.
Will there be some training, do you think, Alana, or some examples for cities who may, for the first time ever, kind of be developing portions of the operating plans themselves regarding bill-specific items?
Yeah, we've had some conversations, certainly for the third-party jurisdictions that are going to have a little additional work to do. We're happy to help coordinate that, and also working with OBOA to help everybody kind of find some good best practices, examples, and that kind of thing. Yeah, I don't know that there'll be formal training classes, but certainly we're happy to help and find good examples. And then I think OBOA, we've talked about being a resource as well.
Greg, I saw your hand first.
To piggyback on Jack's comment, an example of an operating plan would be very helpful, and I hope it's something that is, you know, not like a CDBG grant that requires 27 attachments. I'm hoping it's simple and straightforward. So any example you guys can have to provide us would be great. Thanks.
Thank you, Greg. David.
Yeah, well, I don't expect there to be a lot of heavy lifting for most jurisdictions. It's probably dusting off what they have and updating staff, and away they go. Certainly for those folks that want to use the third party, there'll be more to it. So pushing this to a little bit later date probably is a good thing, to allow time for BCD to get training set up, folks to take that training so that they can then identify who those folks are. Things like that, which if you know, as we go on down this into our next issues, those are all kind of really fall into that operating plan that they have to do. So we know that not much happens in November and December on it. So we're really only talking a couple of months to get training established, folks through the training, and be able to put that operating plan together before the first of the year. So probably a little extra time would be prudent.
Thank you. Wendy?
So I was scrambling, trying to look it up myself, so I didn't have to ask this question, but does the operating plan include it looks like subsection C of 11, it's on like page 7 of the Senate bill that was adopted, include the permit revenue and program expenses. We're getting ready to undergo a very long overdue needed evaluation of our fees. And so I'm just wondering how that could play into an operating plan, which we needed to update as well. But I'm just wondering if that's a part of it. And if so, then certainly we would appreciate having a little longer with the holidays, and then we're short staffed, to be able to have more time to tackle that project.
Yeah, Wendy, if you're referring to the audit requirement, posting the audit of your building department, that is not on the same timeline as the operating plan. That doesn't have to be included as part of your operating plan. I think it's just at least once every 2 years. It has to be posted to your website. So is that what you were referring to? Like the building department revenue piece?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I think so. These are not written in, they're not very fluid, so it's a little difficult to track where it's going. And that's not you, it's just, it's the nature of how they are. But I can figure it out.
It's every bill in the world Alana has to deal with.
They're a little wonky. But yeah, I think the intention on the audit side of thing was that would give time. It's really saying once per biennium, right? And so you're going to have other audit work done at a city. And so we're hoping that by setting it up this way, you can kind of plug that into the audit work that will already be going on, so that you don't have to do a special kind of side audit specific to this, but you can use that audit process. So that was the intention for that requirement.
Thank you.
Greg, I see your hand.
Yeah, Alana kind of answered my question. It's just what are those audit requirements? I don't know if those have been specified yet, because I would love to, and I would definitely want to roll this into when we do our annual audit, and that way we're always taken care of every year.
Very good. Yeah, the audit requirements are going to be on page 3 of Senate Bill 866. It's section 2, subsection 6 of the bill. Yeah, and that has all the details in there. Any other comments as it relates to either when to submit the next renewal and updated operating plans, or the cycle, those groups 1 through 4 for future operating plans? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to move to issue number 4. This relates to approved operating plans. So the Building Codes Division approves building inspection programs. The division also outlines the requirements for operation and an operating plan. It is the municipality's duty to comply with these laws and to keep on file an appropriate operating plan which complies with the law. The division intends to clarify its rules where the rules refer to an approved operating plan, since there is no formal approval process. So the options we identified was to update the rules to clarify there is no formal approval process at the division for those operating plans. Another option could be other ideas. So I will open that up for any discussion. Yes, Jack.
My only thought here is that since there is no approved operating plan and a full approval process, it's more of submitting your plan to the division. Is there a reason from a time standpoint, since they're not being reviewed, that the program renewals need to maintain in the group 1, group 2, group 3? And the only reason I ask that is there's been times we jumped into a place or a city or a county that we've seen ordinances that didn't have the correct code adopted and were 9 years behind and things like that. And I think maybe a little more often with submitting your operating plan at least might be better than waiting for group renewals that could extend a jurisdiction out 3 years. And some of that is even guilty here where, we may notify the city of a change in a building official status, but it doesn't mean that the city has notified the division of the building official change in status, or that we were in such a scramble because somebody quit on a day notice somewhere in that county and we come in to help them. And for some reason, the division doesn't get notified. I think the more frequently this happens with the submittal of the operating plan, the better it is for our industry and the better it is for the trades to be able to look up and see who's working there.
I'll just jump in and clarify. It's actually the 4-year reporting period is in statute. So there's some flexibility around kind of, are we in groups, are we whatever, but the 4 years is statutory. So anyway, that's it.
Nancy?
Yeah, I just want to say that I support the option of removing the language that says there is, that it's an approved operating plan. So yeah, I like that recommendation.
Thank you. Okay. Jack, did you have another comment?
I also support that, and I support trying to remember to lower my hand button again.
No problem.
Sorry.
Any other comments on this one? Okay, seeing none. Moving to issue number 5. This is information within the operating plan. It relates to Rule 918-020, Rule 90. If a municipality procures services from a contract building official, that municipality will need to have additional procedures in place to comply with Senate Bill 866. That includes identifying the qualified employee, establishment of a local board to which a permit may appeal to a contract building official's permit applicant can appeal a contract building official's discretionary decision, or an agreement with a county to use their local board, so long as that county board meets requirements outlined in Section 2, Subsection 4 of the bill, and also the audits conducted and made available pursuant to Section 2, Subsection 6 of the bill. There could also be additional information outlined by the municipality for consistency and communication. That can include the authority and responsibilities of the qualified employee, the procedure for providing notice to the qualified employee and permit applicant of the discretionary decisions, the procedure the qualified employee will follow when reviewing and ratifying or disapproving a contract building official's discretionary decision, timelines for appeal of a discretionary decision, and a procedure for handling discretionary decisions. The division is seeking input on what information should be provided in the operating plan if the municipality is choosing to use a contracted building official. The options we've identified is require a municipality who uses a contract building official to outline the procedures required in statute in their operating plan. That could include items 1 to 3 that are outlined above. Another option, in addition to that first bullet point above, so including the 1 through 3, we could also require a municipality who uses a contract building official to provide additional information in their operating plan for consistency and communication. That could include some or all of the items that were listed in items 4 through 8 that I discussed, or other options as well. So I will go ahead and open this one up for discussion. Yes, Jack.
I'm in general agreement with the list as it's been laid out. I think it covers the bulk of what we need to get in there. I think I would also like to see limitations of the responsibilities of the qualified employee, so we avoid the qualified employee trying to make technical building code decisions, things that they're not allowed to do, perhaps.
Thank you. Other comments on this one?
Well, folks are thinking about it. I think maybe I'll just clarify and for my own mind. So the audits portion it's talking about for the operating plan is really your procedure, your plan to do the audits and where you're going to post them, that kind of thing, not the results of the audits. So I can see how that was maybe a little confusing, but the idea is that you're going to tell us your plan to comply with the audits provision in the bill.
Yes, David.
Yeah, I would just, I guess, offer that, you know, as much as we don't like loose language, certainly trying to leave some of this loose when we get down to things like, you know, how you're going to make a decision may very well depend on what that decision is. You know, whether or not you need a permit may be a different decision than on something simple than is an alternate materials and methods of approval okay, and those types of things. So certainly some kind of language and maybe just laying out how those decisions, you know, maybe a process or resources for how those are made might be the limit of really what you want to go into in an operating plan, because there's no way you're going to cover all of them, and it would be, you know, a lot of pain and agony to put it all together, and folks probably won't remember to go back every time they're going to do this once a week and read the operating plan to make sure that they're following a specific provision of some detailed plan.
And I think you just cut out the very end there. You said whether they're following a specific, and I didn't catch the last part.
Oh, detailed plan that was laid out in their operating plan.
Thank you for that. Any other comments on this one? Okay. Seeing none, we're going to move to issue number 6, which is conflicts of interest. And this is Rule 918-098-1475. So the division currently has a conflicts of interest rule for building officials, inspectors, and plans examiners in that rule number. The rule prohibits a person with an Oregon inspector certification and an Oregon code certification from getting paid to perform or manage work regulated by the state building code for a company engaged in construction or property development in Oregon when employed as an inspector, plans examiner, or building official by the division, a municipality, or a registered business under ORS 455-457. There is an exception to that general rule with the allowance of some work 6 months after hire as necessary to complete or transition or previously accepted work, so long as additional requirements are followed. Senate Bill 866, Section 4, declares building officials, contract building officials, inspectors, plan reviewers, and other persons that provide building inspection services under contract with a municipality, a public official, for the purpose of ORS Chapter 244. So included in that chapter is 244020, which defines actual and potential conflicts of interest. 244120 describes the method for public officials to handle conflicts of interest. Because of that language in the bill declaring the people a public official, it appears the current language in OAR 918-098-1475 is no longer necessary. However, the bill does provide authority to the director when conflicts of interest occur. Won't read through this here, but it basically does outline a procedure for some conflicts of interest. We're seeking input for rulemaking advisory from the Rulemaking Advisory Committee on whether to amend the rule to include the new standards. And actually, I will read through it here. It says, in addition to and not in lieu of the authority of the Oregon Government Ethics Commission, the director of DCDS has the authority to suspend, revoke, deny, condition, or refuse to renew a license, certification, or registration of a building official, contract building official, inspector, plan reviewer, or other person that provides building inspection services under contract with a municipality if the director determines that that person or the owner, director, officer, manager, member, or majority shareholder of those people has violated certain statutes or has engaged in an actual conflict of interest as defined under 244020. And it says a determination of the director under subsection 2 of this section does not bind the Oregon Government Ethics Commission. So options would be to update Rule 1475 to eliminate the current language and instead reflect the division's authority under the bill, which is what I just read, or other options. Okay, Jack?
Thank you. This is one that we asked for a lot of help from legislatures. The language was written really bad, and part of that was in the rules process. And actually the bulk of all of the people who attended and went to those meetings were against it, and it still just flew through. And so this prevented amazing people like Matt, in some cases, giving a vague example of being able to be a college instructor in building codes. There was a lot of different things in there that could have created a conflict. You're teaching contractors continuing education for the CCB. Is that something you shouldn't be allowed to do? We weren't sure. And so the way that the language was written before was so vague and so confusing that it really wasn't understood, and people were scared to do anything. Yet on the other hand, you had a side of people who were taking advantage of it, and they just had to go to their city attorney or their boss and have them tell them it was fine. And then they were okay and they could continue on. So since then, we've still seen jurisdictions who have had licensed electrical contractors performing inspections in the same county where they're working. And we kind of have to squint and walk away, not wanting to create problems outside of where we ourselves work. But on the other side of that, I want to make sure that not only do we clean up the existing rules or get rid of them, or the changes that were made a few years ago, however long that was, but that the new rules are clear. We don't want to restrict certified inspectors and certified plans examiners from being able to work for a jurisdiction and also work for a third-party company part-time. That is not a conflict with when you're working in two different places doing the same work. You just have a different person signing your check. That was the intent of the main push for all of this legislation, that certified individuals be treated the same as somebody who works for a city or a county. And at this point, there's nothing that prevents somebody from working in Marion County and also working from the city of Salem part-time. Maybe they're only filling in from time to time because they're retired. As third-party providers, we use a lot of semi-retired individuals, and they may choose to work directly for a jurisdiction for a 2-week period while somebody's on vacation, or a month while they're sick. And then they fill in for us the rest of the year in emergencies. And not maintaining the ability to do that or reaffirming the ability to do that will be very hurtful to the trades, because right now there's a lot of places that wouldn't be getting any inspections. In fact, Marion County asked this morning for electrical help, and I'm going to a retired guy who works part-time for a jurisdiction to try to get them covered in this emergency. And so it's really critical to me that we spend some time on this area, and that we make sure it's fair, and that nothing prevents somebody from being employed at a jurisdiction as well as being employed with a third-party provider, so that if they choose to.
Thank you, Jack. Nancy?
Yeah, thanks. The city of Portland really supports this. We've had a hard time with this ever since it went into place, because we, kind of the reverse of what Jack was talking about. For us, we have a lot of, plans examiners and engineers that do want to, do side work, not within the city of Portland. I mean, they could be, 2-3 counties away, and this prohibits that because it's statewide. And so, yeah, we really do support removing those barriers. And because the language says, gives BCD the discretion if somebody has engaged in an actual conflict of interest, as defined in the statute. I think that covers if somebody's doing something that they really shouldn't be. And, so BCD can still step in and, address that situation as it comes up. So thanks.
Thank you. Matt?
And I would agree with both Jack and Nancy. Another thing that we run into is recruiters trying to get good building inspectors, as often they come out of the trades. And a lot of times we have to hire them at a lower level depending on their amount of experience, and being able to hire them as a full-time employee and have them subsidize their income until their wages get up to where they need to be is a great tool to be able for us to use and for them to use to be able to get into this trade. And, we always have the caveats that you can't, when I worked in Happy Valley, you can't work in Happy Valley if you're doing that. You can't work in Clackamas County if they were one of our employees now. So I think there are, the municipalities are already watching out for that. They don't want any conflict of interest. So I think that this is a good change. So thank you.
Thank you. Jack.
I'll just add on to what they both said. I mean, agreeing with Nancy as well. Obviously, being able to use a licensed structural engineer for plan review on major projects is a big deal for small jurisdictions that we serve. And so if we reach out and we want to contract with a licensed structural engineer or a licensed architect who happens to be a phenomenal structural plans examiner, that's a huge benefit for the jurisdictions who normally wouldn't be able to afford that. And it also ensures building safety for structures that are of the highest technical level, which is very important. And for that architect or engineer to be able to work under a contract, perform a plan review, also really opens up the market of available licensed plans examiners. And as long as they're not reviewing plans in the jurisdiction where they're designing or doing work, there should be no problems with that.
Matt, did you have your hand raised, or is that's okay? Just making sure I didn't miss you.
Sorry, did that again.
Any other comment? No problem. Any other comments on this one? Yes, Wendy.
Just a quick comment. It seems like the language doesn't, and this isn't the time it's too late to have brought it up, but it doesn't deal with contract plan review, and maybe that's not an issue. I don't know. Maybe it can be managed with because it talks about contract building official and contract inspector, but anyway, that's all. I think it's, yeah, I agree with everything everyone else has said. I'm just noticing that it doesn't include, it would exempt them from this, it would appear. And maybe that's fine.
Thank you for flagging that. Any other comments?
Before I panic over this, so you're saying in the bill, plan reviewer is in the list. Oh, I see, but you're making a distinction between a contract plan reviewer and a plan reviewer. I think the intent, I believe, is that every certified person, no matter who they work for, if they're acting in their official capacity doing plan review, inspection, or building official services, if they're a public official. But if there's a gap, we can fill that by rule because we do have that other authority. So we'll take a closer look at that.
Yes, Nancy.
I'm sorry, I think it does say it in there. I mean, unless I'm misreading this, but it says, BCD has the authority to suspend, revoke, blah, blah, blah. Registration of a building official, contract building official, inspector, plan reviewer, or other person. And then it continues on, if it determines that the building official, contract building official, inspector, plan reviewer, or other person, etc. So I don't see that plan reviewer is exempted, and then there's the catch-all or other person, etc.
Yes, Wendy.
Yeah, it says or other person that provides building inspection services. I mean, it's plan reviewer or other person that provides building inspection services. I mean, I guess a plan reviewer is a building inspector of sorts. They're just inspecting the plans. I don't know, in my world, the inspector is the person that's out in the field checking off the little box. They're not the person that's, and they may be one and the same, perhaps in some jurisdictions, but in some cases they're not. They're just the paper guy in the back office that's reviewing plans. But anyway, so that may just be me not understanding that a plan reviewer is also by definition an inspector.
I think we would all agree that a plans examiner provides building inspection services. So I don't think there's any concern from the industry there.
What's that, Jack?
Oh, I was saying, I think the language is there and the intent's there, and the intent from the legislators is there that the whole group of inspectors, plans examiners is all wrapped into the same rules was the intent.
David, you were cutting out a little bit, but I believe that you said that you agree that the plans examiner is providing building inspection services. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, I think generally we would all agree that that's part of the building inspection services that the rule intends to take care of there.
Any other comments on this one? Okay. I think that makes it through the list. I do have a note on here that during the rulemaking, we're intending to make some changes to assist with readability and application of the current statutes and rules. The intent behind those changes is not to alter any meaning behind the rules. Any other comments related to the bill or this rulemaking process or issues that we already discussed and maybe moved on from and you had last minute thoughts? So then that concludes the issues that we outlined for today's Rulemaking Advisory Committee meeting. I do want to thank everybody again for taking the time to meet with us today, providing advice on the issues. We greatly value your time and your input, so thank you. If you do have any additional advice, you can feel free to send that my way after the meeting. We ask that you do it as soon as you can, just so we can take it into consideration as we prepare the proposed rules. We are going to start on working on drafts of the rules with this input in mind. The rules are going to be filed either in September for an October hearing or in October for a November hearing. This committee meeting is not the last time to provide advice. There will be more opportunities for public input. Specifically, with the proposed rules being filed, there will be an opportunity to either provide written testimony on those rules or to attend the rulemaking hearing and provide oral testimony. If you reached out to us if you RSVP'd for this meeting via email, I'll be certain that you get copied on everything. And if you'd like to provide testimony on the filed proposed rules, it will be welcome and considered, and that's true for you and everybody else. If you have not been in contact with me via email, if I don't have your email address, you can feel free to contact me at rulescoordinator.bcd, as in Building Codes Division, at oregon.gov. Again, it's rulescoordinator.bcd@oregon.gov. Alana, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I just really appreciate, I know this has been a long journey to this RAC and a few other RAC meetings along the way and other conversations, and I'm really grateful to all the time you all have spent on this issue. I'm optimistic about the future. I think we've got a practical solution here we can move forward with, and so thank you. And I'll just ask you again, particularly those of you in local government, if you could help us get this on the radar of all of the other building officials, both in terms of renewals coming up in the not so distant future, and also this conflicts change I know is a big change. It sounds like there's some agreement that we should be replacing our current conflicts rule with this new language. So that may have implications for folks' procedures, policies internally, across the state. So if you could help us let everybody know. And again, just thank you very much for the conversation. I think this is probably our shortest RAC meeting to date, and this is the one that we're really going to have some rules on the other side. So really appreciate it.
Hey, Julia.
Yes, Jack.
I was wondering if pretty please if you and Alana and Ted and Matt could hang out for just a minute, and David, so we could talk for just real briefly about the third party kind of SRI issues that we're having. It's really causing harm to some of our employees and some of our jurisdictions, and I think it's something we can fix easy. I sent Alana an email about it earlier, but if I could just have 10 minutes, that would be great.
Yeah, Jack, since this is a public meeting, can I ask that we set up a separate meeting to talk about it so that we're not meeting outside a public meeting? But I'm happy to set up a meeting to go through those issues.
Yep, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thanks, Julia.
Any other comments before? Yes, Nancy.
No, I just want to say thanks.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you to everyone. Appreciate the input.
Thank you all.
Excellent. Yes, Stephen.
Just quickly, on the training aspect, if anyone has ideas or concepts about how we put together both the basic and the advanced training, please feel free to get in contact with me. I've done some preliminary planning, but I'm open to any ideas at all. And you can reach me at stephen.sims@oregon.gov. Again, that's Stephen, STEPHEN, .sims@oregon.gov. Thanks.
All right. Any other comments before we wrap up here?
I have one comment, Alana. For the local governments, it'll be kind of a quick turnaround once we get this rule approved, and then the renewals and all of that stuff. There will be emails to all the jurisdictions sent out to let them know in advance of when that due date will be.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be using the our usual gov delivery for all the interested parties and all that kind of thing. And we're also trying to get these rules filed and completed ahead of January 1. We've got quarterly adoption, so they'll be effective January 1, but we're hoping we'll have it all kind of done well ahead so everybody's on the same page. And it sounds like there's some general agreement on some of the things that'll be important to everyone on conflicts and renewals. So we'll start getting the word out. I was also hoping to use that next quarterly business meeting of OBOA to get this on the radar as well.
I was going to say we can work with OBOA on that and their board. So
great.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other comments? All right. Well, thank you everybody again for being here. I appreciate it. We'll keep you posted as these rules move along. So thank you. That ends our meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Everyone.